All right, we've got the pieces on the map now, and here we're looking at the bay and harbor at Corunna. We've got the British fleet transports and then the ships of the line parked out there waiting to evacuate the British Army and possibly to engage the French. If we look a little bit to the west, we'll see that we've got one of the, well, of course, the Spanish volunteers, which are mostly rubbish. Spanish mobs are there in the fortifications. And we've got one of the British divisions outside to kind of cover things. Moving a little further along the road, we've got another, it's the reserve division parked out there. And then as we get a little closer, we then come across, there's General Moore and the 1st Division, and then the 2nd Division here along the road. And then, of course, opposite them, we've got the French 3rd Division, and then Marshal Soult with the Corps Artillery and the 1st French Division. Now, before we get started playing, it's important to talk a little bit about the parameters of the game. This battle starts at the 12:20 turn and concludes at the 7:20 turn, so approximately 21 game turns. Victory conditions for the British are putting the French on level 2 and maintaining a clean line of retreat all the way back to Corunna, free of French zones of influence. A more overwhelming victory would be to put the French on level 3 and still maintain that line of retreat. For the French, a victory would be to put the British contingent on level 2 and kill or capture General Moore. A overwhelming victory would be to put the British on level 3 and to capture and hold or put troops here at the Castillo de San Diego. And an overwhelming victory would be to capture these port hexes in the town of Corunna by the end of the game. And that would be a little bit of a challenge, to put it mildly. Now, the British have one additional type of victory option, and that is by declaring an evacuation. What would happen then is if the British contingent's on level 0, 1, or 2, they could designate one division as a rear guard, and all the remaining troops would then move back towards the port of Corunna and begin loading up onto the transports. And then they would then move off the map, and the transports can move back then and continue to take troops off out of the port. The British then could have victory if they're able to evacuate a larger number of their troops. If they can't get enough away in time, then it would be a draw. And if they have, I think, less than 40% evacuated, then it is a French victory. And that's an option that the British player can initiate whenever they feel like it during the course of the game. Now, one last thing to talk about is I am going to be using the 5th edition rules, but you'll notice that I don't have any artillery case on here. This particular game was published before the ammunition wagons, were a regular item included with the counters. I believe that started with the Battle of Lutzen, where those started to show up on a regular basis in the counter mix. Even if I did have them, I really am not a big fan of playing with the ammunition rules. I think it just kind of is a bit tedious, but I know some people want to get all into that. For me, I'm not that interested. I figure they'll find some way to keep the ammunition flowing. In this particular map, there's lots of little trails all along here, and so there's plenty of opportunities for the artillery to get resupplied. I know in some battles where there's a distance from the road and things like that, you could imagine that the artillery could have difficulty getting supplied. But here we've got lots of little trails and whatnot that would provide opportunities for the artillery to get resupplied. So I'm just going to leave that as an abstract concept and not get into the weeds with rolling for ammo resupply. Now finally, I thought I'd talk a little bit about my plans for the two armies. For the French, the line of attack is going to be a little bit off to the west. Here with the 3rd Division, the idea is to maybe work around the flank here a little bit and just do as much damage along here, keep the British engaged, and try to use the artillery and the skirmishers to the best effect. Dealing then with the other French forces and artillery, plus the reinforcements that'll be coming in. The idea is to move here into the village of Elvina and then turn onto the British line in this sector. Of course, the advantage will be that I've got dragoons and light cavalry coming in from the west, and the idea is then once those arrive, can use those to flank or harass the British in this particular zone. Then the dragoons that come in here behind the 3rd Division later in the day can perhaps then be used to attack the British left here along the coast. So that's the general idea for the French line of attack. For the British, it's pretty much a defensive battle. Their goal is to try to inflict as much damage on the French as they can while minimizing any damage to their own forces, particularly trying to prevent General Moore from getting knocked over by a cannonball, which is what happened historically. And if things are starting to look bad, then perhaps triggering the evacuation victory possibilities. The British do have some units and divisions in reserve. So we do have options to bring Paget's men and Fraser's forces forward if the French start to move in to this ground here, basically along between the two forces, and possibly threaten this line of communication, this road that leads to Corunna. So they're there to serve that purpose if it happens. Finally, I think it'd be kind of cool if the British fleet got a chance to see some action. These ships of the line are really strong. This, I think, is the Balfour. Somewhere along here is the HMS Victory. Oh yes, there's the Victory. So you can see it's got a range of 24. Its medium artillery value is 80. Its long range value is 72. So you just kind of park these along the shore, and they can do a lot of damage to any French that get close by. Of course, the chances that the fleet will intervene are pretty slight. But if they do, it'd be pretty cool to get the HMS Victory out there throwing some cannonballs around at the French.